Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, to another edition of GovCon Growth Bytes. My name is Robert Turner. Today, we're going to continue a topic that we introduced a few weeks ago, and we're going to talk about some of the changes to FAR Part 19. I've been reading and listening and talking to folks over the past several weeks, and thought it would be a good topic to summarize for us. I'm going to try and do this at a high level. And today we're going to talk about FAR Part 19. We're going to talk about the structure. We're going to talk about the rule of two. We're going to talk about important changes to 8A set-asides and how that impacts small business contracting. And we're going to talk about marketing and why that is going to become a more and more critical part of your enterprise if you're selling to the federal government. So as they say down under, let's get stuck in. So FAR Part 19 is one of the key areas of the FAR that the whole industry has been talking about as part of FAR overhaul, or what we've been calling FAR 2.0. You can see all these changes as well as some very helpful hints on acquisition.gov. So let me encourage you to go over there and read through some of this. It is actually, I'm going to say this again later in the discussion, it's really critical for all of us to become more and more fluent with the FAR as well as the SBA regulations, and we're going to talk about why when we get to that section. But as part of the reduction of the FAR by about 12,000 words, at least in FAR 19, they've increased the organization a little bit. So now we have three main sections. Subpart 19.1 is all about pre-solicitation and acquisition planning. Subpart 19.2 is about evaluation, proposal evaluation, and award. And subpart 19.3 is about post-award, subcontracting plans, compliance, reporting. Those kind of issues live in subsection 3. They've also consolidated definitions into one subsection. So that's very helpful. We now no longer have to look throughout the FAR part for definitions. So simplicity is good, but the simplicity and the reduction in the FAR is not going to be without challenges, and it's not going to be without, I think, a little angst in the community. Because we're going to see probably some challenges to that, which are going to play out in the legal system. So hold on to that idea. We'll get to that. Next topic, rule of two. So the rule of two, as we have affectionately called it, mandates that contracting officers set aside contracts for small business if there's a reasonable expectation that the government will receive offers from two or more responsible small businesses. That's been the rule. It's been moved in FAR overhaul from 19.502 to 19.104. So again, FAR Part 19, subsection 1, section 104. Look for the new language there. So the language in FAR 19.104 continues when it says, only if the award can be made at, quote, competitive terms and fair market prices, quality, and delivery. So this last phrase really gives the contracting staff across the government a lot more flexibility, because they can look at their requirement, they can look at how they perceive the small business community's ability to meet that requirement and come to their own conclusions around market prices, quality, and delivery. So I mentioned in the intro that marketing is going to become more and more important. This is really one of those places. I think as we move through FY 26 and 27, and as we get used to this new FAR 2.0, as we're calling it, how we market our capability as a small business community, and conversely as an other than small business community, is going to become more and more important. Set-asides are not just going to happen. We're going to have to help the government in many cases believe and understand and defend setting aside work for small businesses. We're going to have to help them do that market research. We're going to need to market our capabilities. And even though it may sound counterintuitive and against competitive best practices, gather up your friends and have them market a similar capability to these contracting officers so that the government is assured that there are two or more responsible vendors. You really need to get above two in order for them to feel comfortable. Okay, so marketing's key, and the government's going to have more and more flexibility to really do what they want with this phrase: competitive terms and fair market prices, quality, and delivery. Next topic. Let's talk about the end of once an 8A, always an 8A set aside. This language in FAR 2.0 has been moved to FAR 19, subsection 108, paragraph 11. This new FAR removes this requirement that you can't move things out of the 8A. Okay, so traditionally, if the government sets aside a piece of work as an 8A set aside, it stays an 8A set aside. That's kind of a permanent designation. That is no longer the case. Now, contracting officers have the ability to move work from an 8A set aside to another socioeconomic set aside, also to a plain small business set aside. So if you're an 8A contractor especially, let's talk to you in your situation. I would not look at this necessarily as a net negative, but look at it as a positive, because now a contracting officer setting aside a piece of work, either for you directly as a sole source directed award or as an 8A competition, they're not making some kind of permanent decision that they're going to have to live with for a long period of time. They have the ability to move it out of the 8A program. Should you graduate and they want to continue to let you compete for the work, they now have an easier path to get that done. Much more flexibility. So this is a lower risk proposition for the government when they're making something an 8A set aside, because they're no longer making this permanent decision. The FAR overhaul is also encouraging contracting officers to make use of competitive 8A methods rather than just defaulting to sole source awards. So learning and building your competitive muscles is going to be more and more important. And let me recommend again, I did so in a previous newsletter podcast. I recommended that we follow what's going on with the tribal community. It's been publicized by O'Keefe Media. I won't mention the firm by name, but you can find it easily on X and LinkedIn. Follow what's going on there, because I think that's going to have a big impact on our community as we move into 2026. So under the new FAR Part 19, agencies can now prioritize general small business set-asides before they look at socioeconomic programs. So that's very much in line with what we're hearing from the Trump administration, moving away from DEI, kind of canceling the DEI programs and all of the support that goes into building a DEI employee culture and infrastructure. That's having a similar flow down to contracting and contracting set-asides. So just something to be aware of. Next topic, conflict brewing between the FAR and the SBA. So the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, is not the ultimate rule of the land. It's not the highest authority on small business matters or anything else often. So let's look at organizational roll-up within the executive branch. The FAR Council, which produces the FAR, has participation from DOD, GSA, and NASA, but lives under the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, which is part of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which is a direct executive branch office that doesn't live within one of the 15 executive branch departments, but it's outside the Small Business Administration. But the Small Business Act that was passed by Congress delegates authority over small business size, status, and these issues to the SBA. These are codified in regulations as part of 13 CFR within the Code of Federal Regulations. 13 CFR trumps the FAR. So again, I had mentioned earlier in the podcast that we need to all be conversant with both the FAR, especially Part 19, Part 13, Part 8, etc., and the Code of Federal Regulations, especially Chapter 13 as it relates to small business. Read those. Read one section a day for a couple of weeks, and just take notes and read it. Upload those things to your favorite AI engine and let AI help you summarize and refer to them and point out the differences. When we find distinctions or conflicts between FAR 2.0 and 13 CFR, it's going to take either legislative changes or challenges legally within the judicial system using the courts, GAO, Court of Federal Claims, and other places. I'm sure I'm not an attorney, in order to work out those differences. And that's probably going to take some time. So as we move into this new fiscal year and into a new calendar year, and as this FAR continues to develop, my recommendation to everyone is to communicate your feedback back to the FAR Council and back to the SBA. Become conversant in the language of these changes and within the Code of Federal Regulations, and keep these in mind as you're looking at new proposals, new RFPs, and proposal evaluation that's coming back from the government. Protesting and working through the legal system is going to become the way we're going to get some of this. Some of these changes kind of worked out. And before we protest, we want to make sure that we understand all the rules. So in the future, especially as this new FAR 2.0 takes into effect, I think we could find ourselves in compliant with the FAR and out of compliance with 13 CFR. Or we could find ourselves doing what we understand the Code of Federal Regulations requiring and being outside FAR 2.0. And the government will make a call that is unfavorable to us. They will make what we what we would perceive as the wrong call. And so we're going to need to help them get that all squared away. So I had mentioned that FAR Part 19 is something like 12,000 words smaller in the new version than it is in the current version. So we would think that, simpler rules are that's gonna be good. We're gonna like that. That's gonna help things. Well, I think it will, but I also think that it could lead to more litigation, not necessarily less, because we're creating gaps, because we're not putting forth as much detail. So as those gaps get noticed, there may need to be litigation to get those things worked out. So that's something to keep in mind. So marketing your capability becomes more and more important, because once an 8A, always an 8A now is no longer the key. Government contracting officers are going to be able to favor total small business set-asides as opposed to just automatically moving toward a socioeconomic. So if you want it moved in a socioeconomic direction, you need to use your marketing skills and your marketing channels, and enlist the help of your friends and colleagues to make those cases to your friends in the government, in procurement shops. Okay. I hope all of this was helpful. I'm trying to do these kind of podcast and video newsletters and trying to take advantage of some of these new media outlets as a way to kind of increase our outbound communication at R. Turner Consulting, help our clients raise some of these issues, and build momentum as we move into fiscal year 26. Today is Thursday, October the 30th. We're still in the middle of the government shutdown. Chaos abounds. we wish you all the best. And thank you for watching, listening, and reading. We'll see you next time.